Okay, so my work is about the issue of overborrowing and underborrowing in emerging countries. As is well known, emerging countries face borrowing constraints, whereby foreign lenders are not willing to lend to these countries beyond a certain level. And these borrowing constraints, which typically are take the form of countries not being able to borrow beyond a certain fraction of some asset or beyond a certain fraction of income, are well known. These type of constraints are well known to generate externalities, pecuniary externalities, because the value of the collateral that countries can or agents can pledge as collateral depends on a price that is endogenous to the economy as a whole, but exogenous to the individual agent. And as a result, there is individual agents fail to internalize that it is their own collective borrowing that is causing the collateral constraint to bind from time to time. And that generates an externality. The typical result in the related literature on borrowing constraints in emerging countries is that these economies in equilibrium overborrow. That is to say, they borrow more than is socially beneficial to the economy. In this particular study, what we do is to first show that this type of models of small open economies with collateral constraints, are prone to multiple equilibria taking the form of self-fulfilling crises. These type of crises are crises in which everybody becomes, out of the blue, everybody becomes pessimistic about the outlook of the economy. As a result, everybody reduces consumption. That brings prices down, in particular the price of pledgeable objects for collateral falls. That tightens the collateral constraints, that forces the economy to deleverage, justifying the initial worries, and as a result the crisis becomes self-fulfilling. Households living in economies of this type tend to underborrow because they understand that the economy is fragile, is prone to this type of financial crisis, and as a result, the economy exhibits too much saving or underborrowing instead of overborrowing. This type of underborrowing is inefficient because it's the manifestation of precautionary savings in response to a very strong inefficiency in the economy stemming from these collateral constraints. And as a result, there are policies that are in order, are called for to avoid this kind of self-fulfilling crisis, and they take the form of imposing severe restrictions to capital flights in cases in which there are large outflows of capital driven by panics of the type that we have seen recently in Europe and earlier in other areas in Latin America and in Asia. And finally, we show that this type of financial crises are a very robust prediction in models of small open economies with collateral constraints and the very large and plausible parameterization ranges. That is the summary of the paper.